Thank you for clicking on the video, and thank you for like any time you spent like watching this or like listening. I know like everyone's super busy, so just giving any bit of time on this, I really appreciate. I am super tired, and there's lots of things going on, so bear with me with the video as well. It's going to be even worse than the other stuff I've probably made. But I'm making it because essentially I put on Facebook a while ago that I wanted to make a mini series because I was sensing like, things have got a bit more toxic, and I wanted to shine a light and maybe change some of the negative narratives that were being pushed. But just in like the recent weeks, there's been like a lot of stuff that's came through on the news. So we had in Scotland we had the new hate act that came through, which protected like transgender people, and there was a big backlash with that. We had the CAS report that came out, which was like a review in England for the treatment plan of like young kids and adolescents, kids as well. There has also been a whole bunch of J.K. Rowling tweets. There's also like the kind of political rhetoric that's been going around, and we've seen even Keir Starmer, who is going to be potentially the next prime minister, make U-turns on trans rights, and it's just kind of like all coming together. And I think particularly because we've got an election in the UK, maybe that's bubbled up on my Facebook feed. Every time I go on, there's a whole bunch of anti-trans stuff, and I don't click on it. I don't read it or whatever, but I find like it's a lot. And there was a time as well when I used to get a lot of Andrew Tate stuff, and I didn't even know who he was. This is like his pre-arrest that he had. But maybe the stuff like his was like a lot of paid ads, and maybe that's why it's coming through, and it's making me think, is everyone else seeing this? But there's also been like changes in or kind of events that I've seen happen in my own life. An example, even at work, there was a woman who posted transphobic comments in a couple of the channels at work. One which was the actual Pride Network, which is bold as brass. But then there was a conversation I heard after with another woman speaking to a group of women, and it was about, I think that it was about that situation, I think, plus some of J.K. Rowling's tweets. And I'm going to paraphrase this, but the woman speaking was like, I'm not going to be told who's good or a bad person, because even Hitler did good things. And I'm just thinking, like, in my life, when was it okay to turn around and say, you know what, like, or even use Hitler as an example of like, yeah, you know what, this person did bad things, but actually they're good, or I like them. Like, you don't use Hitler as an example under normal situations, or back in normal times, or what felt as normal times. And some of the J.K. Rowling tweets as well, where she uses some really vile people who have came out as trans, and that are like predators, and it makes me feel when I'm in the bathroom, you know, as other women thinking that of me, and particularly like if they have kids there, what happens if they speak or like look at me? How will that be perceived if I like respond or anything like that? It is like a very anxious thing, and I don't know how they're going to react. And it might be like I'm overthinking it, but in my life, I've had situations where things go from like 0 to 100 like instantaneous. An example was with Lauren. We were in Sydney. We were just walking home one time, and this guy came out between two cars, completely shirtless, and started swinging punches at me for no reason. I don't even know who the guy was, but like I've had random stuff like that happen in life, and so it puts you on edge of like which way, like things can change really fast. How is that going to happen? And there was also this time in February, Laura and I went to a public swimming pool. It's the second time I've been swimming since coming out. These three women came out and they went straight to the benches and sat down on the side. And I was in a swimming suit with like shorts on and nothing like revealing or anything like that. And there was 6 of us in the water. And when they sat down, I kind of just thought, oh, that's a bit strange. I don't think I've ever seen anyone just come into a pool and sit down straight away. And one by one, people started to leave the pool because they had been in it for a while. And eventually it was just Laura and I, and she said, it's time to like probably get going. I'm going to go in the shower. It's like, oh, I'll finish my lap. So I was the only one in this public swimming pool in the water. As these women were sitting on the side, and I continued to do my laps. And then when I finished and I went to like the metal staircase thing to get out, as I came out, they went into the water, and like so many, like I can't. It's such a hard thing, but like it just makes me feel like, am I that disgusting to be in the water with, kind of thing? Like, why can you not even bear, like, it's a big pool. I mean, like, it was a big enough pool to separate ourselves in if it was that bad. But maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe it was a coincidence, and maybe like they had to wait an hour till their food from their lunch went down, and that's why they didn't come in the water. But at least that came across to me like that. And those changes plus what I'm seeing like online is just like really overwhelming at the moment. And I'm seeing even some of my like allies kind of flop a little bit around on like support, and that makes it shaky because when I came out, like people kind of changed around me, and there were still some core people there, but even those core people have got a little bit shaky. So a part of this video is to kind of tackle as well as some of the stuff that came in the CAS report, because I think that's probably the thing that kind of hurt me, as well as I see like impacting people, and it's going to impact the near short term future, I think, of like trans care and some of the narrative around that. So yeah, I'm probably going to try my best, because you've already given me so much of your time, to just quickly whiz some points off on this, and hopefully by the end of it, I've maybe cleared the air on some things. This CAS report that I've mentioned has been in the headlines, so for some of you that aren't quite aware, this report was kind of independently commissioned, but there is kind of political levers that can ensure who is the one responsible for carrying the report and who they choose in their teams to do like the peer reviews of the studies. So it's not completely non-biased. The person that did the report, there is news of them already following anti-trans groups like LGB and some other one I forget. So there's already some skepticism. There is some good pieces written about this, but still you can't go on what people say. You have to kind of review the report. And what everyone was kind of getting at before the report came is there's a massive demand, or a massive increase in demand, to use the services, the gender clinics for youths. And or is the care acceptable? And for those that were seeking the care, they were saying no, because the waiting times are so long, it's really hard to be seen. This kind of central care system where you have to go to a specific place to get treatment rather than going to your local GP isn't working for us. That was like kind of the kind of general concern for people that were looking for the care. And the people who aren't looking for the care but are like skeptical with kind of the medicalization of helping trans people we're saying, we're hurting kids or whatever, and we're using propaganda, and there's this trans agenda to like make your kids transgender, all this fear stuff. And this kind of plays a little bit into the report as well. And I'm just going to quickly get through some points, hopefully, to kind of ease your minds. But the first one is this table. This table shows the referrals, and it only shows referrals to this clinic in England, and it shows only a snapshot as well, because this clinic has been operating since the late 80s, but they're only showing recent years and mostly on this incline, and it looks like a massive incline. But what you can see here is the referrals are about at top. If I give you the top number rounded up, it's 2,000 a year, and this is like for kids all the way up to 18. Now, just to give perspective, if all those kids that were getting referral were to get treatment, which they're not, and they haven't been seen, and we'll get onto that, but just to give you a perspective, even with 2,000 a year coming through, the population of 12 to 18-year-olds in England is about 3.2 million. So the 2,000 of 3.2 million is about 0.065%. It's not even 1% of kids. And in her report, she states that the level of self-identifying as trans in like Gen Z is about 5%. So it goes to show that people might be saying that they're trans or associates being trans, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're getting the medical treatment or hormone blockers or cross-sex hormones. But even to look at those numbers, we know that the waiting list to be seen, whether you're an adult as well, but for the kids, it's about 5 years. So those referrals that you're seeing in the last 5 years have not got to. So like the clinic doesn't have the resources. And that is one of the problems, again, that trans people were saying, like there's this gatekeeping and underfunding of treatment. For me, the gatekeeping I mentioned when I was trying to transition in my early 20s, that they wanted you to wear, or me to wear, female clothing and live as a female for 2 years before being given access to hormones, which was like social suicide. We find out that the percentage of people referred is 0.0625. I can give you instances of the Scottish clinic. I can't find the statistics in this report, but in the Scottish clinics, only 2% of those that are referred actually go on to hormones. There's a discussion that happened between, I've forgotten his name, from The Guardian, Thingy Owen, and one of the previous senior doctors at the gender clinic in England, and he says it's about 1 in 4, I think it is in this clip, but the regret rate is low. And Hillary Cass, who's trying to make this like much more scientific, says in the paper, essentially, I've spoken to older trans women and they say that the youth needs to like slow down. It's so anecdotal. Like, what percent of trans people? Don't get me wrong. I don't think a kid should go straight onto hormones or anything like that. But I definitely know from my perspective that it has not changed over the years. Like, if anything, it's got worse. And what I struggle with inside, I can put to rest a little bit knowing that I came from a different time, and like the access there with my parents, it just couldn't work. It just wouldn't happen. So I don't have that. But to know now that we're all a little bit more knowledgeable about it, that if there's a kid similar to go through that and that they're getting blocked from the help, then that's a really hard, like, yeah, because it's. Coming back to the report, one point I want you to make was that the referral numbers that you see increasing those are referrals given by GPs and self-referrals. So it's not the gender clinic itself referring kids or adolescents to themselves. And the GP, I know for myself, on 2 occasions when I went about discussing to them about gender dysphoria, they couldn't do anything other than refer me to the gender clinic. So it's almost like just the first protocol in that sequence. And once you get to the gender clinic and once you do get seen, further assessments are then taken. So there isn't actually in itself much meaning in the referrals in terms of like the treatment that's being given, other than the fact that people are now thinking that they may have gender dysphoria, or you don't need to have gender dysphoria to be transgender, is a point to make. So really the question is then, why is more people referring? And Hilary Cass says, it's unprecedented to see this number of people. And I refer back to the point that those referrals are 0.065% of the children populace, and that even if you want to take people's own self diagnoses from surveys, like I said, about the 5%, you could look at time graphs for left-handedness or ADHD. I mean, with left-handedness, I think that jumped up to 12% of the population. You can look at any point in time on a graph and get inclines. It's really when you find the level off. But it's worth investigating. But it doesn't mean you have to put off the treatment that is being given, because that is separate to the referrals that are happening, is the point I'm making. She also states that the kind of gender congruency, I can't say it, but basically gender dysphoria that the kids might be experiencing is probably similar to other mental health issues that kids are facing, like body dysmorphia, which is very, very different. It is very different. And that's one of the worries I get, is because it's kind of getting close to conversion therapy. It's like, these other therapies will help you not be trans or feel the way that you do. And yet, in her own report, she acknowledges that one of the factors that plays to someone having gender dysphoria is biological. She says that the research that they've reviewed suggests that it is also impacted by biological factors. So, and that's another video I want you to actually make about it. Where does it come from, being transgender? But her recommendations to move away from the care that's currently going on and is being developed across the world from other gender clinics who are coming to similar conclusions about the earlier you help, the better the outcomes. And if we look at the detransition rates, we know there's somewhere between 1% and 2% of people that decide that transition wasn't for them. And then we find out in that cohort, people detransition for a whole bunch of reasons, not necessarily because they weren't trans. And that's another distinction as well. If someone does detransition and says it was completely wrong, it wasn't for them, then they weren't trans, they were misdiagnosed. That happens. But what's most important is this current treatment model that we know from existing research has more positive outcomes than other current mainstream treatments for other illnesses that we give out. So it's almost like you're getting more scrutinized, or you have like double the standards put on you. And it's dangerous because it's adding to the toxicity of the discussion rather than what she's trying to say, which is like kind of get to the bottom of an honest discussion, which is not happening because the report itself is not being honest, and it's not being accepted by the professional transgender healthcare groups that exist in the world. They came together and wrote a letter against it because of some of the hypotheses that the report makes on existing evidence and how it interpolates that existing evidence as well. So, yeah, I guess I'm coming to the end of this, but hopefully what you've got from this is that it has been sensationalized a little bit. And when you see headlines like millions of kids are getting like gender surgery or hormone blockers, that's not true. And the other point being that the regret rate or the transition rate, it does exist. There is people like in the trans community we don't deny because it's true, but that number as being recorded is relatively small. The last thing is I've not read the whole report. I am one person and I am unbelievably busy with lots of other things going on. And so I've given up a bit of my weekend to go through that report. I got through like 10% of it and I've tried to reference things. I've not done it justice in this video. I've been really drooly and boring toned or whatever in doing this, but I just needed to make this and I just needed to get it out there to kind of share like the kind of the lay of the land of like what actually is going on rather than all this like discourse and point scoring and being pushed around as the boogeyman, because at the end of the day this is impacting the kids that are on treatment is a small number. Even in schools where you're finding like your children's friends are coming out as trans, let people cut their hair or grow their hair or dress as they wish and explore that, because there's no harm in that. It becomes more tolerable as people, but it has nothing to do with the inflation that you're feeling, the energy crisis, the struggle you have for disposable income, the crime, the knife crime that's been on the rise. It's not to do with this, and neither is it to do with the mental health crisis that's happening for both men and women, or the funding of the healthcare. Like the whole thing about single sex wards, and if there's a trans person in there, like they'll be moved out of the ward. Like, one, it's horrible, but two, like I would find it horrible, but that's going to be, if we're 5% of the population, you need to be in hospital 20 times, say, till you bumped into someone like me, and then they're going to move me apparently into like another room, which they already struggle for women to have women only wards. So it's just like, guys, because at the end of the day, like, that's not going to fix the NHS waiting list and the treatments that you need. It's all just like in your face, look at the squirrel, and we'll continue to dismantle or defund or whatever. And hopefully trans people won't be an scapegoat for that. And so I owe you a big, massive thank you if you've got this far, if you've listened. And again, apologies for the dreariness. And if you do have questions or any comments, please just add them. I will be adding, so hopefully it's all there, all the links to the stuff that I've discussed if you want to have your own research. And yeah, I just hope it was helpful in the end. Thank you.